tonight.
We are announcing our efforts to update our stay-at-home guidelines.
The first state to close down prepares to reopen. The latest as California gets ready to loosen guidelines. Plus, fighting for religious liberty.
Telling the federal government they have to force nuns to provide contraceptives.
Why the Little Sisters of the Poor are returning to plead their case before the Supreme Court. And in the face of lockdowns and social distancing, a look at how museums are going virtual. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. California rush, the first state to shut down, won't be the last to reopen. Welcome to Faith Nation, I'm John Jessup. Well, California starts the first phase of reopening later this week, a milestone for the hard-hit state. Another indication things are improving. Aside from spending last weekend at Camp David, today President Trump left Washington for the first time since the pandemic made its way to the mainland. Joining me now is White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Ben, all this seemingly good news also comes with a warning from health experts.
Yeah, John, today's trip began with a presidential warning to state leaders as they begin to ease restrictions. Trump said he would get involved and intervene if states put people in danger by not following White House guidelines. This as the White House says they are in the early stages of winding down the coronavirus task force.
I'm going to Arizona. I will see you there.
The commander-in-chief touched down in Phoenix to visit a facility that produces face masks.
They have done an incredible job on many fronts. And so I'm going to pay my respects to a great company. They make N95.
This trip, the first in a series designed to highlight efforts to fight the virus. Trump plans to stop in states taking steps to reopen, as Dr. Anthony Fauci issued his own warnings of a potential spike if that happens too fast.
It's the balance of something that's a very difficult choice, like how many deaths and how much suffering are you willing to accept to get back to what you want to be some form of normality sooner rather than later.
I respect the governors, and I've given them great discretion. If, however, I see somebody doing something that's egregious or wrong, I will stop it.
New York's governor planning to open some areas upstate May 15th. On the West Coast, California's governor announced they'll begin back-to-business measures soon.
We are announcing our efforts to update our stay-at-home guidelines and begin the process of moving into phase 2.
That phase allows some retail shops to reopen by the end of this week, including clothing stores, sporting goods, and florists. Folks will also be allowed back on some beaches to run, surf, and swim, but not to simply relax in the sun.
Lower risk we are defining in the retail sector, and we'll be making adjustments this week in the retail sector for pickups and for all of the associated logistics and manufacturing related to retail.
Newsom says the key to reopening centers around the ability to test and perform contact tracing of infections.
And talking about testing, pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and BioNTech announced they began human trials for the vaccine today. If it is in fact successful, it could potentially mean that a vaccine could be ready to distribute across the country by the end of the year. John?
In a recent USA Today op-ed, former South Carolina Senator and current chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute, Jim DeMint, calls for caution but says America needs to reopen the economy immediately. Senator DeMint is with us now. Senator DeMint, thank you for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, and I hope everyone listening and watching today is healthy. It looks like we're turning this whole thing around right now.
Certainly, that is our hope. When you say immediate opening, are you suggesting that every business in every state open now?
No, I think we've got some really smart governors. South Carolina is doing it well. Certainly, Governor DeSantis in Florida is going county by county looking at infection rates. But let's go back to the beginning of this lockdown and remember that they weren't trying to keep us from getting this virus. They were just trying to slow the infection rate so that it wouldn't overwhelm our hospitals and healthcare system. So we've got governors in most of the states around the country who can move back to regular life in a cautious way and just keep an eye on the infection rate. If the infection rate comes back, we need to make sure that we have the healthcare facilities and experts to take care of it. But this idea that we hear from some blue state governors is we've got to keep our economy closed down, I'm afraid that has nothing to do with healthcare. It has everything to do with politics in the 2020 elections.
So you're teeing me up for my next question. You say the hysteria about reopening the economy isn't about public health dangers that come along with reopening those businesses, rather politics, power, and the 2020 election. Can you explain a little bit more what you meant by that?
We do know this, that our economy is on the verge of collapse. And we know that if the coronavirus comes back in the fall, we can't shut everything down again. The Federal Reserve now is printing money, and the Congress is spending and borrowing more money than we ever have in history. And we've got a higher unemployment rate than we have in decades. So we've got to get back to work, and we can do it cautiously. But this idea of keeping the economy shut down is only so that the economy will be bad in November. It's clear from what they're saying and what they're doing. The thing that worries me the most is how many people in the political realm are taking advantage of this in ways that have nothing to do with healthcare.
Senator DeMint, I want to ask you as a follow-up, new data from Stanford University shows that since Georgia has reopened sections of its economy, the risk of exposure has risen 40%. Are you concerned about a rise in cases as the economy reopens?
Well, notice they say the risk of exposure. We don't have data that suggests that more people are being infected or getting sick. We're learning more about this virus. Most people who get it don't even know they have it or have very mild symptoms. It's only a very narrow section of the population that's at risk. It's folks who are generally older with pre-existing conditions of some kind that are complicated by the coronavirus. So working age people who are healthy have almost no risk from this. And so I think what we need now more than anything else is just good data on who is at risk and what are the real symptoms of folks who get it but are not hospitalized. I think what we can do is reduce the fear significantly that most people can go out and go back to their life at very little risk. But some people who have health conditions and are older need to be very careful. And so we can do that without keeping things locked down, because I don't see any evidence that the lockdown is producing better health results.
All right, Senator DeMint, we're going to have to leave it there. Jim DeMint, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Well, turning now to Capitol Hill, where lawmakers want to hear firsthand about the administration's coronavirus response. The White House, though, is preventing some of its key players from testifying for now. We're joined now by Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, who exactly is it that lawmakers want to hear from?
Well, the two main people they want to hear from are Dr. Deborah Birx and Anthony Fauci from the White House Coronavirus Task Force. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi argues that as the House appropriates more money to fight this pandemic, they need to hear from them to know what resources are needed, how much money is needed. But the White House argues that they want them focused on fighting the pandemic and not preparing to testify before House committees. Now, President Trump is allowing Fauci to go before a Senate committee next week, but he said today that sending them before a House committee is just a setup. Take a look.
The House, they should be ashamed of themselves. And frankly, the Democrats should be ashamed, because they don't want us to succeed. They want us to fail so they can win an election, which they're not going to win. But they want us to think of it. They do everything they can to make things as bad as possible.
Now, the White House plans to block the coronavirus task members from testifying in the House for at least the month of May.
Abigail, the Senate today began the confirmation hearing of John Ratcliffe, President Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence. Now, this is the second nomination to the same post after the president withdrew his nomination last year over concerns about his qualifications. What's changed this time around?
Well, it's unclear what exactly has changed, but the current acting director's time was about to expire, so President Trump had to nominate someone. And what else is unclear is if Ratcliffe will have the support from Republican senators in order to be confirmed. But many Republican senators did give Ratcliffe a very warm reception today on the Hill. But Democrats are very concerned that in a position that requires apolitical leadership, that as a Republican congressman, that Ratcliffe would be too influenced by political biases. And many of them focused their questions today on just what influence President Trump would have over Ratcliffe in his new position. Take a look.
If the president said tomorrow that the intelligence agencies in this country have run amok, would you publicly disagree with what the president said?
Nothing the president says will impact the delivery of the intelligence.
That's not the question that I asked.
Now, Ratcliffe tried to ease their concerns by promising the committee that he would testify even if the White House attempted to block him, and by saying that he would be willing to speak truth to power. John?
All right, CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Thanks, Abigail. Well, the Supreme Court is making history this week, hearing arguments for the first time ever by phone, including a crucial religious freedom case involving a group of nuns. As Paul Strand explains, they're hoping to end a 7-year-long legal battle.
All the Little Sisters of the Poor want to do is continue their longtime mission of service.
They are an order of Catholic nuns who serve the elderly, poor, and dying, truly the most vulnerable among us, especially in the midst of this pandemic.
Diana Verm is helping to defend the nuns after they defied the Obamacare contraception mandate. It would have forced these pro-life Little Sisters to violate their conscience by making them cover abortion-causing contraceptives in their health care plan. The group won at the U.S. Supreme Court in 2016 and received a religious exemption. Now states like Pennsylvania are taking the case to court again.
Telling the federal government that they have to force nuns to provide contraceptives. The stakes are higher than that at this point because the states are arguing that the government doesn't have the authority to issue religious exemptions. And that really threatens our nation's rich history of protecting religious minorities by accommodating their religious beliefs.
If the Little Sisters lose, they could face fines of $60 to $70 million a year.
Those are annual fines. It's $100 per employee per day.
Thanks to social distancing, this will be the first religious liberty case the Supreme Court hears by telephone conferencing. This brand new practice, which also lets the whole world listen in live, began Monday.
Oh, yay. Oh, yay. Oh, yay.
Now, the Supreme Court usually releases its biggest rulings this month or during the month of June. But with this pandemic already forcing the court to hold hearings later than usual, it may also mean we don't get a ruling on this Little Sisters case and others till July, maybe even August. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Paul. The disturbing rise of anti-Semitism sweeping the globe. We take a look at the reasons why, next on Fake Nation.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. Earlier this year, the world marked the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. So it may come as a surprise that there's a surge in anti-Semitism today. For example, the Netherlands, home of Anne Frank, saw a 35% increase over last year. Jennifer Wishon has this look at what's driving the dangerous trend.
Some Jews fear the level of intolerance they're experiencing is reminiscent of that preceding the Holocaust in the 1930s. And that's not to mention discrimination coming from Muslim-majority countries. And to help us understand what's going on, I'm joined by USERF Commissioner Gary Bauer. Gary, give us a sense, what is the reality for Jews today in Europe and around the world?
Well, the story, I'm afraid, is fairly bleak. Anti-Semitism is like a coronavirus of the heart and soul. It just seems to be able to mutate. It pops up everywhere in every century, and it seems to go in waves, and unfortunately we're experiencing one of those waves now. Even if you put the Middle East aside, we're also seeing in Europe, in the European Union and in Great Britain, higher rates of anti-Semitism, both on the progressive left and on some far-right political parties. So sadly, in one country after another, including in some cases here in the United States, anti-Semitism is growing.
How is the pandemic affecting anti-Semitism? Are Jews feeling more pressure?
What we're seeing right now in the Islamic world in the Middle East is disgusting. In some bizarre way, Jews are being blamed for the coronavirus. We see not only radical groups in the Middle East blaming Jews, but even journalists in countries like Jordan suggesting that the virus was made in an Israeli lab or made by Jewish scientists, and that they've unleashed it to kill Muslims. So we do see something like the virus being exploited and causing the anti-Semitism to be worse.
Well, your colleague at USERF, Chairman Tony Perkins, calls anti-Semitism the canary in the coal mine. And he says that this is an early warning sign of coming persecution or worsening persecution for all faiths. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I do, and history proves it. When a country goes down the road to anti-Semitism, it never ends there. It almost always inevitably then spreads to go after other minority groups, whether it's Christians or other groups that might be despised for one reason or another. And, you know, I've noticed, and this I think is very significant, right now in the Middle East, there's an effort underway to prove by anti-Semites that Jews never lived in the Holy Land, that the whole thing is a fable, it's a lie that's been made up so that Jews could colonize the land that we call Israel. Well, look, if Jews never lived in the Holy Land, then Christians never existed in the Holy Land. If Jews weren't there, our entire gospel is wrong. So you can see how the attacks on Jews in the Holy Land very quickly morph into attacks on Christians too. So it's imperative in the 21st century that every nation do everything it can to fight anti-Semitism. It's bad enough on its own, but it leads to even greater horrors down the road.
Well, this is certainly an issue for us to be following. And Commissioner Bauer, we thank you so much for your time.
It's great to be with you as always.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Well, President Trump is denying any involvement in a failed coup to overthrow Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Maduro claims 2 American citizens who were trying to capture or assassinate him have been arrested. In a state television national broadcast, he held up their U.S. passports and read off their names and birth dates. Maduro blames the attacks on the Trump administration and the neighboring nation of Colombia. Both deny any involvement. Stuck at home during the pandemic? Why not head to a museum? We'll explain after this.
Daddy,
Yeah, buddy.
how many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts, in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain. Get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
With schools closed and field trips canceled, the nationwide shutdown is opening up a virtual world of museums. Gabe LaMonica shows us how, like so many, museum curators stuck at home are putting artifacts online, a mere tap, scroll, or click away.
This is the National Mall, where millions of Americans have walked through some of the world's best-known museums for free until now. So museums everywhere are finding creative ways to bring their exhibitions home. From the jaw-dropping images of this helicopter journey to a rock concert in the Atlantic Ocean, to this noiseless roller coaster looping lazily past a monotonous series of empty rooms. Art museums like Washington's Von Neumann are showcasing their artists' response to the coronavirus.
I ain't got nobody.
In Queens, the Louis Armstrong House Museum is offering a virtual glimpse at the jazz legend's life at home. And New York's Museum of Modern Art is putting Salvador Dali's silent home movies online. Desolate city streets, empty national monuments, and museums in Washington are leading lonely curators to take matters into their own hands.
Maxwell House.
Hello. Experts at the Shuttered Museum of the Bible have taken to creating lessons of their own, like this one on the connection between kosher coffee, the Haggadah, and Maxwell House.
With 2 working parents and a child currently at home, it's hard to find time for a rest or to get any work done before bedtime, which has led to some late nights. Thank God for coffee, what can I say?
Cooped up guides offering comic relief.
You ain't nothing but a hot dog. No, that's really not it.
Amy Van Dyke is the lead curator of art and exhibitions.
I've been getting a little bit distracted at home.
Offering her take on Elvis Presley's favorite passages in the museum's Elvis Bible.
His favorite book, from what it looks like, was the Book of Psalms. Because in the Book of Psalms, there's lots of notations and writing in there, which makes sense because it's a book of songs.
Not to be outdone, the curators at the International Spy Museum are bringing lessons of their own online.
We call this Spy from Home.
Learn the tradecraft of strategic and operational deception from the comfort of the living room.
Now, invisible ink is really important to spies.
Or head to the curator's corner to learn how to make invisible ink or your own disguise from the Spy Museum's Jackie Isle.
If you dress up like SpongeBob and get out there on the sidewalk and you think you're going to be undercover, you're going to be sadly mistaken.
And for an intelligence analyst's view of the pandemic keeping us all at home in the first place,
there's endless
coronavirus questions.
Check out online discussion led by former Intel agents like Spy Museum Executive Director Chris Costa.
When the pandemic is over, what are the lasting impact on the intelligence community, on the society as we know it, on the world?
The pandemic is unleashing a ton of digital content as museums take their exhibitions online and board curators stream free lessons on history and artifacts from their home to yours. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Gabe. Coming up, a special birthday surprise for an American hero.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torresadillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Well, finally tonight, from weddings to baby showers and birthday parties, social distancing has denied so many from marking their milestones. But that's not the case for one veteran. For his upcoming 104th birthday, friends, family, and neighbors of Sergeant Ed Shelby surprised him with a parade at his home near Cleveland. He has been having a hard time dealing with the pandemic's isolation, so well-wishers drove by to help put a smile on his face.
We see all this negative with the pandemic. I figured, let's bring some happiness for him.
He's led a great life. He has, as you can see, so many friends. And he's just a great man, and I'm proud to be his son.
Shelby is a World War II veteran, and he turns 104 years old in a few weeks. We all salute him. Well, thanks for watching Faith Nation. Have a great night.